All right, so getting started with class two on how to create your 2021 fundraising plan. Today's class is going to be all around crafting your plan. So, our last class was mainly focused around diving into some of the just kind of laying the groundwork for fundraising planning in 2021. And this class is mainly focused on actually setting those goals and plugging all of those fundraising activities into your calendar. And yeah, excited to get started today. Thank you everyone for joining. So for those of you who haven't seen me before, my name is Candace. I'm the manager of content and education here at CauseVox. I've been here for 5.5 years now, which has flown by in the blink of an eye. And every day I get to work with organizations on helping them really grow their fundraising online. So let's dive into a little bit more about what CauseVox is if you're not familiar. CauseVox is a digital fundraising platform to help you raise more with less effort. We have donation pages, crowdfunding campaign sites, peer-to-peer fundraising, and most recently, virtual fundraising is very popular on our platform. If you're interested in exploring CauseVox, feel free to just reach out in the chat and let me know, and I can definitely follow up with you. All right, so 2021 fundraising plan course overview, as I said last time, was all about assessing your fundraising needs and exploring digital fundraising opportunities for 2021. Today's class is all about actually plugging in all of those insights learned from our last class into crafting your 2021 fundraising plan and really having a strategic mindset when it comes to fundraising planning this year. Our class three is actually more of an individually scheduled consultation. So I get to actually chat with each and every one of you for a half hour. You can schedule a session with me. I will get that link to you in the follow-up email. And this is best used for if you have a plan built out already using our template, or, if you write it out in a different format as well, and share it with me beforehand so then I can review it and then we can make the most of our 30-minute session to really help you review and optimize your fundraising plans for the year. In addition to just today's classes, you are going to get the slides and recordings, that fundraising plan resource guide, the Smart Fundraising Goals worksheet, which is in the chat that you can access right now, as well as the fundraising calendar template. All right, so last class we went over basic intro to fundraising planning, digital fundraising, and exploring that methodology when it comes to creating ongoing fundraising growth at your organization, especially focused online. Number three, we went over a lot of how you can assess your fundraising needs for 2021, and then also exploring the three main ways to predictably grow your fundraising, which we'll kind of be picking up with that today. So for today's agenda, we're going to be completing your goals worksheet, finalizing your 2021 fundraising strategies, and then crafting your actionable fundraising plan. All right, so let's dive into our class today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. So out of this, you're going to have a practical, implementable plan with very specific goals and a completed fundraising calendar at the end of this course, ideally. Just keep in mind, we do recommend having an ongoing mindset when it comes to fundraising. So, a lot of organizations that I chat with, they're like, oh, we do fundraising twice a year. We'll ask for individual gifts during year end and maybe do a spring campaign or something over the summer. But I highly encourage you to really think of ongoing as fundraising as an ongoing process, especially when it comes to digital fundraising, because you're always going to be wanting to attract more of an audience to your organization, nurturing them so that they're engaged, and then asking for a gift on an ongoing basis so that you're continually converting donors and driving further action and further gifts from them to retain them for the long run. So just keeping that in mind when it comes to fundraising for the year. So your templates, this is what they should look like. These are the examples that are filled out. I recommend you take a close look at the samples and then, kind of build out yours using some of these insights from here. This is that fundraising goals worksheet, and highly recommend that you start here when it comes to fundraising planning, because that will lay the goals in mind that you can then use to plug into your calendar. So if you haven't done so already, I recommend that you download that fundraising planning calendar and SMART goals template. All right, let's talk about completing your SMART goals for 2021. Really at the end of this, you should have this whole document filled out with specific fundraising strategies that you're going to be implementing throughout the year to help you actually reach your overall goals. So one of the things that I really think is important to keep in mind is that it's essential that your fundraising activities align with your fundraising goals. So if you are doing, for example, a lot of organizations, they'll do an event because they've always done it. But if you actually look at your fundraising goals that you set here for the year, and that fundraising event doesn't align with those goals, it's probably a good time to reassess if that belongs in your fundraising plan. So everything that you do should align with the main strategies that you're focused on to help you drive predictable and sustainable growth at your organization throughout the year. And last time we went over the three main strategies of how to drive this kind of growth, which is increasing donor retention so that you keep your donors for the long run, giving again. And there's a few strategies I've laid out under here, kind of summarizing what we went over last week. Acquiring new donors, and then of course, increasing gift size from existing donors as well, and kind of getting them to give more. So when it comes to, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but I think it's now it's time to really plug that in. So when you're thinking about your macro goals is really just how much you need to raise this year to cover your budget. We talked a little bit about budgeting last week. So let's think about how much you really need to raise this year, and then what overall strategies you plan to implement throughout the whole year to drive that fundraising growth at your organization. So a good example here is to increase fundraising income by 25% compared to 2020. And then the strategy focus is growth through donor engagement, increasing gift size, and retention. So just a quick example for you to keep in mind as you're setting those macro goals. Of course, your budget, and this is what we went over last time too, is going to really tie into what your goals look like, and calculating the overall operating budget, considering already pledged grants and gifts, and coming up with the total amount you need. So once you have your goal, your main goal set for the year, now we're going to dive into setting micro goals. So smaller goals that will help you accomplish those main goals throughout the year. So when you look at a big number for what you need to bring in over the course of the year, it's pretty overwhelming. And so one of the things that makes that attainable is actually breaking it down into these smaller strategies that will help you get there. So this is kind of where SMART fundraising goals come in. You might, if you've seen some of our other webinars, we kind of talk about this a lot. So with each goal that you have in mind, it should be very specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound or timely. So, for example, I chat with a lot of organizations that are like, "Hey, we need to just like raise money this year," and I love to just get into the weeds of really what it is specifically that they need to raise right now, and usually, you're able to find a specific program that you need to fund, or have a certain challenge in mind. So whenever you're setting any goal, it should be very applicable and very finite so that you can clearly measure success towards that goal as well, and have it be a predictable and measurable sort of process of attaining those goals. So let's talk a little bit about setting those micro goals. So under each section in your fundraising calendar, you can add as many focused areas as you want. We started out with three and kind of worked off of the same principles as those three overall strategies: donor acquisition, donor engagement, which is increasing gift size, and donor retention. So you're going to want to map out those three focus areas. And then start detailing out those specific strategies that you're going to start implementing throughout the year. So no timelines on this just yet, just kind of mapping out those strategies that you want to explore. And then once you get into actually mapping out the fundraising activities, that's when you really tie specific timeframes around them. So a micro goal example that you might want to set for the year is acquiring 5% more new donors. So how are you going to do that though? So one of your strategies might be to organize one major fundraiser per quarter and one small fundraising initiative per month. Another strategy you might explore is to plan a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, which is proven to help acquire new donors online. And then you might want to use Facebook and Instagram ads to target a new audience and attract more new people to your organization so that they can then be nurtured and converted. So just an example. Another example of how you can increase average gift size. So if you decide that to get to your overall goal for the year, you need to increase average gift size by 3%. There's a few main strategies you could map out. So maybe you want to create giving levels to incorporate into all your online fundraisers and your donation page to help people choose an amount more based on the impact that they can create than just a arbitrary dollar amount. And then you might want to also ask returning donors to specifically increase gift size. So maybe you do some targeted emails, or target one-time donors for a recurring giving campaign could be one way to increase their average gift size as well. All right. So when it comes to settings, these micro goals, um, you'll also see that there's an obstacles column. And so it's really important that with each of these goals that you set, that you kind of keep any obstacles in mind that you're going to have to overcome in order to increase average gift size or acquire more new donors. So we're going to get into a lot of details about these obstacles actually in a little bit, but just keep in mind that you're going to be listing out those obstacles in the worksheet. And then you're going to set those specific targets for those micro goals. So for each of those different strategies that you list out, you're going to want to set your specific targets to help you really stay on track to reach your overall goal. Some more micro goal examples here for you. I'll let you come back to this later. And this is really just a mirror image of what you'll see in our example template as well. So end of this should come out with a full goals worksheet that will really help you keep on track and help you craft your fundraising plan calendar as well. So action items for you is to create your budget and detail out your micro fundraising goals. All right, so let's talk a little bit about assessing your resources that you have on hand in order to attain these goals and any obstacles that you might encounter. For your fundraising plan and for your fundraising goals to be actionable as well, it must also be feasible. So, especially during the beginning of the year, I feel like a lot of nonprofits I chat with are so excited to try all of these new things and have these very lofty goals, which is very exciting at the beginning of the year. But towards the middle of the year, sometimes you start realizing that, oh, all of those big ideas I had just unfortunately don't work with our budget or our staff, or we're not getting the buy-in we need. So I think it's important to take a step back with each fundraising strategy you look at and make sure that it will work for your organization. Um, and that can really play into how you strategize your fundraising for the year. Um, so in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, staff shortage was the number one challenge for nonprofits preventing digital advancement. So that's from the 2019 Digital Outlook report. And I would say there's not one for 2021 yet, but I'm really interested in seeing, just from chatting with a lot of organizations like yours. I know a lot of um, nonprofits unfortunately just couldn't pay staff. So I'm sure you probably have even increased staff shortage this year to really implement everything. So maybe there's going to be some unique challenges that you'll want to spot and then figure out ways to overcome, potentially with volunteers and the like. And then in 2019 and 2020, budget constraints was the number one challenge for nonprofits that prevented them from moving forward with their digital fundraising plans. So that is from the 2020 Digital Outlook report. And then another key insight I pulled out was that 43% of organizations feel technology shortcomings were an obstacle in 2020. So especially with the increased move to digital fundraising, where so like now more than ever, so much of your fundraising strategy is going to be online, it's really important to address technology shortcomings and try and fix that so it's not so much of an obstacle in 2021. So these three obstacles I'm going to be covering in detail shortly. But just to get started, you're going to want to think about listing out all of your fundraising resources, basically who is available to help carry out your plans and how many hours do they have to actually implement those strategies. What software will you use to do all of those strategies, and then thinking through what is your overall fundraising and marketing budget, and so and how that ties into um, advocating for more resources as well. Okay, so first, let's talk about people. People are very important. And as you saw, a lot of you guys are stretched thin. And so, something that you want to do is think about the number of fundraising marketing staff that you have available to help you implement all of these plans to make sure they're feasible. Also thinking through volunteers. So any volunteers that you have, you want to list those out, the number of them, and then do your best to, as well as board members and partners, anyone that you can get involved on your team in helping you bring your fundraising to the next level. Think through who you have, how many people you have, and then also, of course, the hours that go into that you have available with them. So do your best. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard to tie a specific volunteer, because volunteers can come and go a little bit. But do your best to sort of estimate those hours that are really actually available with all of your fundraising and marketing staff, volunteers, board members that you can engage, and your partners as well. I think they're a huge underlooked at resource when it comes to helping you get the word out about your fundraising initiatives. Total up the full hours a week. This will help you make sure that you're starting early enough when it comes to planning out, any of your fundraising initiatives for the year, and that you're actually, going to be able to have the manpower to execute your fundraising plans. So here's just that resources example. I recommend just, taking a look at this later. It's pretty straightforward, but always a good thing to just have this in mind whenever you're thinking about actually planning any kind of fundraising initiative. So list out your fundraising staff, list out their hours and commitments. All right, let's talk about software. So software is very important these days. So one of the things that you do want to think about when it comes to any of your fundraising plans and any obstacles is to take a step back and reassess what software you have and what you might need going forward. So a good thing is just to take an inventory of what is your full scope of all of the software that you're already using. So maybe you're using MailChimp for emails, you're using a donor management tool, Kindful, for example. Maybe you're using CauseVox as a fundraising platform as well. You're using Stripe to take payments. You're using Google Analytics. You're using, all of these different tools. So I think it's good just to even have like an ongoing list so that what are all of the tools that we're using, and then you can take a step back and then see what tools are we underutilizing. What could we get more value out of our email marketing tool, for example, or maybe we can get more value out of our fundraising platforms. Like let's take a look into the tools that we're already using and see if there's any opportunities that we're missing to help grow our fundraising. Also thinking through when you do create that list, what have you grown out of? So maybe there's a tool that you've explored and have, really tried to see if it could work for you, but you're just constantly frustrated with it. And then that's a good obstacle to, list out in your fundraising goals to overcome is maybe you need to explore a new CRM, for example. And then also, what new needs do we have for this year's fundraising plan that you'll also have to think of software to accommodate for those new needs. Speaking of new needs, I want to talk a little bit about virtual fundraising. As we saw with the Wild Apricot survey that went out to over 1,000 nonprofits last year, as of August when they sent out that survey, 42% of organizations already had run a virtual event, and then another 42% were planning on running a virtual event by the end of 2020. So that's 84% of nonprofits really diving into virtual fundraising. And I think this year, especially the first half of this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it continues through the end of the year, virtual fundraising is still going to be a major component of your fundraising events, at least. So I want to talk a little bit about the types of software that you might want to consider. At the end of the day, virtual fundraising really is a combination of a few different kinds of software, no matter how you slice it or dice it. You're going to need a fundraising platform to run your fundraising on. You're going to need an event streaming platform, and then you might need some other platforms as well to help you just make it easy for yourself and optimize the experience for your attendees and participants. So my tip with virtual fundraising is the easier it is for you to run your virtual event and the easier it is for your participants to sign on and watch it and give, the better. So whatever you are looking at, I know a lot of organizations, they're like, oh, but this isn't exactly how we want it to run, but there might be some compromises that you need to make just to make it as easy for you and your donors as possible. Okay, so when it comes to choosing a fundraising platform for virtual fundraising, you do want to make sure that it's pretty easy for you to set up. Typically, a lot of virtual fundraising has peer-to-peer integrated into it, so I would keep an eye out for those capabilities with whatever software you're looking into. Easy to feature your content and sponsors. I know sponsorships are huge, especially with these virtual events. And so that can play into, how you can generate more income for them. So making sure that there's a great place for you to feature them is important. That it's easy to brand and also easy for you to kind of pre-fill in as much content for your peer-to-peer fundraisers if you're going to be doing that. Mobile optimization is key. 65% or more of all of your fundraising traffic is going to come on mobile. So you want to make sure it's really easy to view your content as well as donate on mobile. So just keep that in mind. And of course, making it easy to donate. The easier it is to donate, the more donors you're going to get. So Let's talk a little bit about live streaming. So I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but this is something I get asked about all the time. So with any virtual events that you're going to be doing, live streaming may be a big portion of it. Um, just some best practices I've found from working with organizations this past year is that a lot of them did a pre-recording so that it kind of limited any took off a lot of stress really ahead of time so that they just had people come on a certain day and time and then they broadcasted their pre-recorded program, made it really easy for organizations. If you want it to be a little bit more interactive, I've seen a mix of pre-recordings. So maybe half of your program is pre-recorded and then you do some live content to engage your audience, which I think also works really well because it still takes the burden off of you for half of that event. Um, just a quick tip is to break up long events into shorter separate sessions. So if your event usually goes 3 hours, maybe you want to do 3 hour long um, uh, initiatives or 3 hour long live streams. I think the more engaging you can make it, the better. So the more engaged your audience is and feels like they're actually participating in something, the more likely they will be to keep watching as well as donate. And then, of course, you want to make sure that your live streaming is able to be embedded onto your website and any other, if you are using a fundraising platform, which I do recommend. Let's paste this in the chat. I have a blog post about live streaming best practices so that you can dive a little bit deeper into this for anyone who is interested. So I'm going to chat that in right now, and I'll also follow up with that. All right, so let's go ahead. Three main live streaming platforms. There's YouTube Live, Zoom, Facebook Live. I don't feel the need to get into too many details about this, but just keep in mind that Zoom is really dynamic and it's really engaging. You can also with Zoom have a simulcast to YouTube Live and Facebook Live. The downside of Zoom is that it doesn't really get embedded anywhere. You have to kind of host your whole thing on Zoom. But with that simultaneous live streaming to YouTube or Facebook, you could, kind of get around that. YouTube Live is really easy because it's you can embed it anywhere. So just kind of thinking through those options and making sure that you're using the one that best fits your needs. Also think about any other software that you might need to really implement all of these initiatives. So maybe if you're doing a virtual walkathon, you want to consider using a tool like Strava, which automatically, um, counts your activities. We have a new flexible metric coming out on CauseVox, which will allow your participants to count up to set a goal for the activity that they want to achieve. So maybe it's walking 500 miles, and then they'd be able to set a mile goal and then update their progress towards that goal. You also want to think about integrations between all of your software. So when you do make that big list of all your software, try and think through ways that they can talk to each other so that you're cutting down your administrative time. So for example, with CauseVox, we have an integration available with Zapier. So you're able to set it up for any fundraising campaign or donation page, and then have all of that data automatically pushed into really a lot of different uh, a lot of different applications like Bloomerang, Salesforce, Kindful, MailChimp. But there's, outside of CauseVox, there's many ways for you to connect the tools that you're using. So I would definitely look into those ways that you can streamline um, your processes. Okay, so I had this virtual event pulled up as a quick example of just a way that they really did a good job of integrating a lot of their virtual event and making it uh, a landing page on their website all around it. I recommend coming back to this and taking a closer look if you're doing virtual events this year. But in summary, now more than ever, it's really important that no matter what your fundraising strategies are, you're probably going to need to up some of your digital fundraising tools to help you get to those goals. So, just a few tips for picking fundraising tools is just to make sure that it's easy for you to get it up and running. It shouldn't be a huge process and jump through a bunch of hoops to get something implemented. Whenever you are looking at a fundraising tool, it should be pretty straightforward and not too complicated for anyone on your team to navigate. So it just takes the stress out of fundraising. You want to keep all of your digital fundraising initiatives under one roof. So if you're doing a peer-to-peer campaign and then you also have a donation page, you probably want those two things to be under the same tool, so that you're not bouncing back and forth and wasting time learning two different tools and also having to navigate between them, which also helps streamline reporting and your administrative tasks. What's almost most important, it's important to save time, but it's also very important that it's really easy for your donors to make a donation. So you want to make sure that you're using conversion optimized pages. And lastly, with any tool that you're using, of course, you're going to need some support. So I would try to, look into whatever tools you're looking into. For whatever tools you're looking into, make sure that their support is up to your needs and standards. If you're interested in looking at CauseVox, feel free to let us know, and I'd be happy to help. All right, so now that we talked about those two obstacles of software as well as resources, with the amount of people that you have um, in your pocket, let's talk a little bit about budget, because budget is also one of those things that ties into being able to actually implement these fundraising goals and strategies. So whenever you're thinking of trying a new strategy or even optimizing an existing strategy, there's really two different kinds of spends that you're going to want to keep in mind so that you're not stretching your budget, and uh, finding that you don't have enough in your pocket in order to implement them. So like if you're doing Facebook ads, for example, you might want to think about, how much those ads are going to cost, how much it's going to be to actually develop the content around them, and the like. So just a very quick tip for calculating that this is thinking about the fundraising spend and all of the tools that you need in order to implement that digital fundraising initiative, as well as the marketing plan, and what the full spend looks like outside of just even like including like the time that you're going to be spending creating those content and resources. Yeah, so now that we've taken a look at um the main micro goals and really listing out those fundraising strategies and obstacles, um now we can go into looking at identifying those gaps in those resources overall. So, yeah, whenever you're trying to advocate for more resources, first you do have to assess those gaps in all of those resources that you're currently using. So, what met your needs last year? What changes are needed for this year? And then consider all of those different obstacles that could get in your way. And then when you're advocating for more resources, um, you can then tie these strategies and goals into advocating for them. So, for example, just one example of how you could um, advocate for more resources is to use return on investment to inform your decisions. Um, and I also recommend like reviewing your updated fundraising plan with your staff and board. So whenever you have this fundraising plan, go over it with them, get their buy-in. It's really important that everyone's on the same page, and then have very specific asks in mind to help you expand your budget for your different resources. So let's just, for example, say you're talking to your board and you're looking at the fundraising strategy that you want to do, you want to run a peer-to-peer campaign. So, for example, you could go to your board and say an investment of $185 in CauseVox in the CauseVox fundraising software will help us run a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. This is projected to help us raise twice as much as our email series, directing donors to the donate button on our website with a projected 3,000% in return on investment. That is just an example, but this could really go for any of your resources. So if you say like, hey, we're way under resourced on the number of hours that we have. But if we are able to get, 20 more volunteer hours a month, this is the specific outcome that we'll be getting out of it. And this is, being able to tie that to a specific projected return on investment or number. Great way to advocate for more resources from your board and any other staff members that you need to get buy-in from. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these action items. So first, you want to make sure that you detail out your overall fundraising budget, consider all of your resources at your disposal, and spot your obstacles as well, and then make a list of solutions to issues and proposals for budget increases if needed. So now's a great time. We're a little over halfway through. I'm going to stop and do some questions right now. So I saw a few questions coming in. Bobby asked, is the recording from class 1 available? I missed the class. Yeah, so the fundraising course, both classes are going to be available. Class 1 was recorded and it was sent out. If you haven't received that email, I can resend it to you. So for anyone that is missing the recording of class 1, please just email me and I can make sure that I send that to you as well. I guess for anyone here, I don't want to take too much time going through links, but yeah, so feel free to just email me and I can make sure that you get the recordings and all the resources. And Melody asks, are you also available for a session to discuss possibly using CauseVox support for developing organization fundraising implementation through CauseVox as a resource to discuss cost, fees, requirements? Yeah, definitely. So Melody, I would love to chat with you. Also feel free to shoot me an email and we can set up a separate 30-minute session to go over your needs and your plans. And then I can talk a little bit about how you can use CauseVox for that. And so that doesn't have to be your one-on-one consultation really is all about, making sure your fundraising plan is all set to go. But yeah, I'd be happy to set up an additional conversation with you or anyone else that's interested. We also do have, and I was going to plug it at the end of class, but now that we're sort of already talking about it, I have a webinar coming up next week. It's free. And it is all about how to grow your fundraising in 2021 with CauseVox. So it's kind of taking some of these, it won't go as in depth into all of these strategies, but a lot of these strategies for 21 fundraising, and then showing you what it would look like to do that with CauseVox. So feel free to also go ahead and register for that webinar. I just pasted the link in the chat. Jacqueline, did you or will you send these blank templates? So the templates in the worksheet, there should be the samples that I keep referencing, but there's also blank tabs. Why don't I actually share my screen just to show everyone in case there's any confusion around the Google Sheet. So I'm going to share my screen. Here's the Google Sheet. Okay, so here we have, whenever you first click on the fundraising plan calendar, there's all these tabs at the bottom. So there's the instructions, there's like a little bit about CauseVox, and then there's the sample worksheet, there's the sample calendar, and then there's the blank worksheet and the blank calendar. Also, you can always go ahead and download these. So you can download it as in Excel. You can also download them as a CSV and open them in another program. I recommend doing one of those two to make it easy for you. Or if you want to keep it in Google Sheets, you can just make a copy and then build it out in your own Google Sheets. So this is collectively shared with everyone. So you're going to want to do one of those things to access the calendar and template. All right. Andre asked, will you please define partners as a source of hours and resources? That's a great question. I should have gone over that a little bit more closely. One of the things that I chat with a lot of our organizations about is, I mean, partners are mostly effective when it comes to marketing a fundraising initiative. So, for example, if you want to, you know, let's say one of your strategies is to acquire more donors. You're probably going to want to tap your partners to fundraise on your behalf. So thinking about the number of hours that it would actually take them to fundraise for you. So sometimes, there's a few different ways you can activate your partners for fundraising. So maybe you just provide them a link and they just include it in their next email. And so that's a very short, limited number of hours. Or you might want to consider like, having them do a whole, crowdfunding campaign for you. That's probably going to be more hours that you'll want to consider when it comes to, what your ask is going to be. So thinking about your partners and what levels of commitment that they have to a certain extent or what you can expect from them. And then making sure that, whatever ask you're doing is kind of um, in line uh, with what they've committed already, if that makes sense. Miranda, what is a CRM? Yeah, so a CRM is customer relationship management system. So it's also a lot of organizations have donor relationship or donation management systems. So either way, it's really just a big, more complicated Excel sheet to keep track of all of your donations and your contacts, so that you best know how to engage them based on their history with your organization. Okay, great. So Bobby asks, is there a minimal number of followers you suggest nonprofits have before they start fundraising? So I really do think that you can start fundraising no matter how many individual donors you have. If you're talking specifically about social media followers, if you don't have many followers, I probably wouldn't lean into that yet as a main source of fundraising revenue. Um, but I would see a lot of value in starting to build up that follower base. Um, Something you could think about is maybe running some Facebook or Instagram ads, for example, and helping you get it's called lookalike audiences. So basically, looking at your existing who already likes you on Facebook, and looking at targeting similar audiences to those that are already in your network. So you can even just target another similar organizations, like people that like organizations that are similar to yours, and get in front of that very specific kind of audience so that you can start building up that follower base. But yeah, if you don't have a lot of individual donors and are just getting started, one of the things that I would recommend doing is think about, at the very least, maybe starting like a board peer-to-peer campaign, because then you're kind of leveraging your uh, your board and their audience to get in front of more people and start building up that individual donor base. Same thing kind of goes with partners. So if you can leverage, a small business and their network to get the word out about your fundraising initiative, that's another great way to start building up an individual donor base. Okay, great. Yeah, and Miranda asked, okay, so who might be partners? So when you're thinking about partners, a lot of the organizations that I work with, it's usually businesses. Sometimes it's small and local businesses, sometimes it's corporations. But yeah, primarily you're going to be targeting um, a business to partner with you. Especially during this time, I think it's a great time to develop partnerships because a lot of companies want to show that they're giving back in a time of need. So it might be a good time to start developing some relationships with businesses. For just example, I mean, I know like there's like a brewery by me that partners with some local nonprofits to fundraise for them. They like sell a specific beer and then, the profits from that beer go back to the organization. Very kind of fun example, but also North Texas Food Bank, they partner with mostly more like larger companies, and then have them run crowdfunding campaigns for them. And they've done that with, I mean, they've probably had over 150 of these corporate partners run these crowdfunding campaigns for them, and it's been a really successful thing for them. Okay, so I do want to make sure that we get to all of our content. So I'm gonna go back, and Bobby, that's a great question, and I'm gonna try to address that in our next Q&A part, because I really want to get to actually building out your 2021 plan. So now that we've set, now that we've talked through setting up all of your fundraising goals and the strategies that you want to take and the very specific targets that you are aiming to get to those goals, this will then inform all of your fundraising activities throughout the year, to help you stay on track and accomplish those goals. So this is the fundraising calendar template. We're going to be breaking down each of these columns. So don't worry about having to take in everything right now. But one of the things I want to let you to reiterate is that your fundraising plan is a living document. So you can plan out all of 2021 right now, but especially in this day and age, things change kind of moment to moment. Sometimes we're being told like, hey, the vaccine's being distributed and we'll all get it by March. And then, it might be months later. And then, we really don't know what's happening this year yet, unfortunately. I mean, so that's to say that things are still very unexpected. And I think it's important to have a plan for the year, but it's also important to go back throughout the year and adjust your plans for today's context, as well as, if you're kind of falling behind in reaching one of those goals, you might want to go back and reassess and maybe find some other opportunities for you to meet those goals throughout the rest of the year. So keep in mind that this is something that you should be going back to all year, and you can actually use this to track um, all of your fundraising throughout the year. So then at the end of the year, you have like a nice tidy document to bring back to your team too. Okay, so let's go through the first column, which is about fundraising activities. So I'm not going to go fundraising activities that you can do. There's a lot. I know a lot of people do recurring giving campaigns, virtual events. There's a lot of virtual races and walks right now. You can do Giving Tuesday and schedule that into the plan. Most organizations do year-end giving. You can do peer-to-peer, or do virtual galas, or really so many different kinds of email fundraising is another one, and really so many different kinds of fundraising initiatives throughout the year. So these are just some of those short-term initiatives, I would say, that you could start thinking about when it comes to your fundraising plan. Also, we have tons of virtual fundraising ideas. Again, not going to go into each and every one of them, but virtual galas, virtual races, virtual happy hours. I would say also, I've been seeing a lot of webinars popping up with organizations doing webinars with their community to keep them engaged. So I just keep some of those virtual ideas in mind when you're crafting your plan. So I have a bunch of, if you're trying to figure out some fundraising ideas for the year, I have many recommendations for you. We start off with 150 plus fundraising ideas, and these are both in person and virtual. So you can take a look at those if you're interested in getting some inspiration. We also have 23 top virtual fundraising ideas that we've seen on CauseVox throughout 2020. We also have some very practical examples for you. So I do recommend you take a look at those 3 resources when it comes to actually thinking of fundraising activities. So when you're building out your fundraising activity list, there's a few key things that you want to include. So it would be simply the name of whatever activity it is you're doing, virtual race, for example, your audience, who are you targeting for this? So you're probably, if you're doing a virtual race, you're probably going to be targeting a specific portion of your donors who are a little bit younger, a little bit more active. Maybe they're, you know, um, primarily have given online in the past. So just thinking through who it is that each activity is really aimed at. One of the things that I get asked about sometimes is if people can run multiple fundraising activities at once. And I think you definitely can because, you know, not every fundraising activity is going to be targeted towards your whole audience. So yeah, so keep that in mind. Uh, Dates and thinking about how long it's actually going to take to execute each of those fundraising activities, your estimated expenses, your income goal, and then any additional notes. So we're going to break this down further. But before doing that, just a few quick reminders for suggested fundraising activities. I do recommend optimizing your donation page. Very easy win to help you increase conversion rate and increase gift size. And so that can help you be a very easy switch that ends up actually helping you get a lot more throughout the year. Recurring giving is another one of those easy things that you can implement where, you know, maybe you set your donation page to recurring first and then can capitalize on the high retention rates and the higher number of lifetime value and return on investment. Email fundraising, always a tried and true way for organizations to fundraise where there's typically very high return on investment for that. So 13% of digital fundraising is driven by email. Um, Peer-to-peer fundraising, great tool to help organizations raise twice as much as compared with other digital fundraisers. So if you're doing crowdfunding, try adding peer-to-peer onto it. You'll probably raise about twice as much. And virtual fundraising has over and above even in-person events, wildly increased return on investment. So it's actually a really great strategy. We talked a lot about donor retention. It really does benefit to lean into those different fundraising strategies that help drive donor retention. So lots of benefits from being able to retain those donors and get more lifetime value from them. So whenever you think about all of the activities that you want to do throughout the year to help you increase donations and increase and meet your fundraising goals overall, you're going to want to map out all of those fundraising activities by quarter and including them in each month of the year. So just kind of really simply plugging in the names of those activities. Now, let's talk a little bit more about totaling up costs, resources, and income. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go over again today. So total costs, think about software fees, any other costs that are required to actually execute what it is that that fundraising initiative could could you know could add up to. So really thinking about everything that ties into that, including staff time in hours and in dollars if possible. And then the next thing that you're going to do is project your income. So if you've done similar fundraising events in the past, I think it's good to use those as a guideline, and maybe increase that goal like 10% or so, or whatever really meets your needs as well. Um, and so if you can kind of look back to anything that you've done in the past, that can help you set a goal. For new activities, just try your best to set a smart fundraising goal, informed by your strategy and the number of people that you have in your audience. Okay, so then you're going to want to also, with that, with the total cost and the projected income, you can estimate your net revenue from there. So with your estimated cost and estimated income, you can calculate your net income and then ultimately total that up per quarter to see if you're on track to meet those main fundraising goals for the year. And as I said earlier, if you do have some similar events in the past to look back to, try your best to evaluate your growth by looking at last year's performance. Sometimes you have those finite dollar amount goals, but maybe what you're looking for a specific initiative is, more around, acquiring a certain number of donors, or maybe even acquiring a certain number of followers if it's less of a fundraising initiative and more of a marketing play. Okay, so then when you do calculate all of these things, you can add those estimates to the calendar. So make sure that you plug those in and it'll give you a nice idea of what each fundraising initiative can bring in, what you should be bringing in with each quarter, and then ultimately how much you can expect coming in through the year with all of your fundraising activities that you've outlined. And then if you've with your projected net income, if you're falling short, then you know that you need to make some changes and increase fundraising activities or look into something that has a higher return on investment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about goal alignment. This is pretty simple and resources. With those micro goals that you set, typically it's going to be driven by donor acquisition, donor retention, or increasing gift size. Try to see which goals each activity helps align with, and it can be multiple. So you can really plug in. If a certain fundraising initiative, let's say you get a new donation page, and then that can help increase gift size, as well as if you optimize it for recurring, also increase donor retention. So then that would, align with multiple goals. So do your best to take your micro goals and align them with each of your fundraising activities. And as I said earlier, if you find something that you have a fundraising activity, but it doesn't align with any goals that you have, maybe that means that, that kind of gets put on the back burner, or you reassess your goals and see if there's some other goal that you need to add. Okay, so also just like we have the column for other resources and notes, just a few things that you might want to make note of is which fundraising software you're going to use for each initiative. I think it's good to just have it all planned out ahead of time and have an idea so that you don't get closer to your event and you go, oh, but how are we actually running this peer-to-peer campaign? So just try your best to make note of which fundraising software you'll use or are interested in looking into, as well as marketing software. You'll want to keep track of what your key performance indicators of each fundraising activity is. So what are you looking at in order to make sure that this is a successful initiative? So we'll get more into KPIs in a second. Any other ideas you have for implementation for this fundraising activity, and you can start listing out some practical tasks or next step, remaining roadblocks, and other things that you need to address in order to make that fundraising activity possible. So your action items are then to go ahead and add in your goal alignment and other notes to your fundraising plan. Excuse me. Woo. All right. So with all of this, you should have a very nice fundraising plan that you can then, and goals worksheet that you can really feel organized and prepared to grow your fundraising in 2021. So with your completed fundraising calendar and completed SMART goals worksheet, I would take this to your team when it's done for review. They can, it's very important to get buy-in, and also, of course, just make sure everyone's on the same page with your fundraising activities for the year. And yeah, so make sure that you're heading in the right direction. I would also caution with, we get really excited to start a bunch of new fundraising activities, and I think it's important to try your best to, of course, stay in line with the calendar, but um, you might want to consider listing out which fundraising activities are a priority, and maybe ranking them in some way. It's just an idea of to help you keep on track. So if you are running up on time or limitations, um, just so you know what can be cut if it needs to be, and you make sure your plan is feasible. Very quickly here, I won't go too far into this. There's only a few slides, but it's just measuring. I do want to keep you on track to measure your plan and adapt your plan if needed. So there's a few ways you can evaluate your success. So as I said, there's some key performance indicators you might want to keep in mind. So if you're doing a virtual event, you might want to keep track of how many views your event has or how many attendees are there. Also, for anything, you're probably going to be looking at number of donors, what your average gift size is, cost per dollar raised, ROI. We've already chatted about that. Number of page views is always very interesting, because then if you know your number of page views and your number of donors, you get an idea of conversion rate. So I think these are all good things to keep in mind when you are setting those goals and evaluating success with each of your initiatives throughout the year. And that can inform which strategies are working the best and which ones can be optimized further. So with each fundraising activity, after it's done, you do want to take a look back and look at the total raised from each activity, see if it met your fundraising needs, if it exceeded or your expectations, or if you raised less than expected, and take all of those different KPIs into account as well. And so you also, of course, want to tie everything back to how did your expectations measure up to your estimated budget, just to keep you on track and make sure that, maybe for your next initiative, you'll have a better idea of what to expect from a similar fundraising initiative. And of course, I always recommend calculating the return on investment, just because it gives you a really nice idea of what is the most that you can raise with effectively as little cost and effort as possible. So we've talked about calculating ROI. I won't go into this again, but this will all be in the, of course, in the slides. Typically, digital fundraising is really cost effective and helps you get a higher return on investment. So as opposed to a lot of in-person events, I guess from what I've seen, it costs about somewhere between $30 and $50 for in-person events. And then, CauseVox, it costs about $3 to raise $100. So yeah, so the average cost to raise $100 is very increases a lot on when you take it digital. So for example, I went over this last time as well, just a case study from Summit Assistance Dogs who moved their in-person event virtual. So they actually increased their ROI from 212% to 1600 over 1600%, because they ended up spending 50,000 less in event costs and ended up taking $35,000 more home. Okay, so your action item throughout the year is to continue to evaluate your key performance indicators for insights. And then for any strategies that are particularly performing well, you probably want to lean into those and adapt your fundraising plan to what's working well for you, and is driving the highest success for your organization. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. So your next step is to book your one-on-one fundraising planning session. I'm going to be sending the booking link out in my follow-up email. So just keep an eye out for that. You can also email support@causevox.com, or you can email me as well. I'll get it either way. And we can always take it from there. The best way to get the most out of this, just to reiterate, is having your fundraising plan, or at least your goals maybe mapped out ahead of time. So then I have something to review and can provide feedback on. Otherwise, if you're not ready to build out the whole plan yet and just want to chat through a bunch of questions, and I'm happy to do that as well. And then if you are interested in using CauseVox for fundraising, again, I'm happy to chat with you. So feel free to go ahead and email me, and we can get a separate conversation set up to go over what your fundraising needs are, and then how that can, how CauseVox could help. So we have donation forms, peer-to-peer fundraising, crowdfunding campaigns, and virtual fundraising all kind of ties into peer-to-peer especially. Okay, so I want to just do a quick promo for our upcoming intensives. These are 2 proposed intensives. They haven't been confirmed yet, but I do want to get your feedback as to if these intensives, which are our 2-hour long classes, so from 2 to 4 p.m. on February 11th and March 4th, we are offering these intensives. So the first one is using data analysis and fundraising key performance indicators to chart a better course. So it'd be very in-depth on data analysis for your organization to help you really optimize your fundraising. Should be a really great course. I'm really excited. And then also how to really do annual reporting, and kind of transitioning to more of an impact report to help you better craft your communications with donors, as well as your reporting back to your board throughout the year. So I want to get a sense if you're interested. So are you interested in the data analysis and fundraising KPI intensive? I'll give it another few seconds here. All right, so I'm going to end this. Thanks. That's super insightful. Not gonna share the results, but I'm gonna also go into poll 2, which is, are you interested in an annual reporting intensive? Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. Okay. Upcoming free webinars. We have a webinar on donor thank yous, the beginning of a beautiful friendship. It's all about thanking your donors for retention. So that is free. And we also have the how to grow your fundraising in 2021 with CauseVox. I'm going to be sending out the links to these in the follow-up email as well. And for those of you who are still on with me, there's still a nice little group of you. Thanks for sticking on. I'd be happy to address any remaining questions. Yeah, Melody, we'd love to have you at our free webinars. I guess for anyone that's interested, you can always go. We have free webinars all the time. Of course, you can always go to our page, our webinar page that I just pasted in the chat. You'll see those 2 that I just referenced are the first 2 in the list. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for taking the class. And I'm really excited to have our one-on-one conversations. So Yeah, I'll be getting that email out to you shortly, as well as the recordings and the PowerPoints. And I'm also really interested in your feedback on how you like the classes. And so I'll be sending out a survey as well. Would really appreciate any of your feedback.